So this is technically actually through section 4, but the first few pages are all basically the same. Just the first 2 are graphing equations. The second set of graphing is really graphing inequalities, but you do it the same. And then we have a couple word problems. So axis of symmetry, vertex, and y-intercept is asked for in all of these, the first 4 pages here. When it is in standard form, your axis is going to be negative b over 2a. And remember, this is a, the number in front here. This is b, this is c. All right? Your vertex, you've already found the x value of your vertex when you found your axis. What you just found there was the x value. To find the y value, you just plug that in. When you see f of and you see something inside of it, that just means plug that number in to get y. And then in standard form, your y-intercept is just 0 and whatever c is. So for this particular one, if we want to find the axis, we would do -4 over 2 times -1. So we have -4 over -2. We're going to get +2 as the axis. So my axis here is going to be x equals +2. That's the first part of this question. To graph it, I'm going to put a dashed line going all the way down at +2. To find my vertex then, I already have the x value of my vertex. To find the y value, I just say negative, and I have 2 squared plus 4 times 2 minus 6. 2 squared is 4, apply the negative. 4 times 2 is 8, and then minus 6. So I have 4 minus 6, I have a -2. So the y value of my vertex is -2, the vertex being 2, -2. So I go to that point on my graph and put a dot there for that. And then my y-intercept here, that is going to just be 0 and whatever my c is. My c here is -6. So that is my y-intercept. And I'm going to go to 0, -6 and put a point there. Remember, you can mirror a point across. So if I have this point here and it's 2 away, I can go 2 away on the other side and put another point. And then I have everything I need to graph. So I'm just going to graph my parabola at that point. That is when it is in standard form. So this is vertex form. With vertex form, you still have the A. So this is still A. This right here is H, but remember this is a minus in your formula, so you're going to negate your H when you do these things, and this is your K. All right? So to find my vertex here, my axis is going to be x equals h. And if you need to put a negative there, it's opposite of what it looks like. Because in your vertex formula, it's x minus h. Okay, so you're always going to flip that sign when you use that h. All right? Your vertex then is going to be that h. And again, if you need to put a little negative there to remind yourself that it is the opposite of what's there. And then k, just the way it's given to you. And then your y-intercept is going to be 0, and then what happens when you plug in a 0? That's going to be your y value. So for y-intercept, you have to solve for it. It's not just handed to you like it is in standard form. The other two are, however. So for this particular one, my axis then is going to be x equals -1. It's the opposite of that number that I see there. My vertex is going to be -1, +2, HK. And then my y-intercept is going to be 0, and then I need to plug it in. I say 2, 0 plus 1, quantity squared plus 2. And I need to solve for it with order of operations. 0 plus 1 is 1, 1 squared is 2. 1 squared is 1, 2 times 1 is 2, 2 plus 2 is 4. And so I'm going to get that there. And so my y-intercept here is going to be 0, 4. All right. And then I'm going to graph it the same way. I'm going to graph my axis. At -1, I'm going to put my dashed line to show my axis. My vertex then is at -1, +2. And then my y-intercept is up here at 4, and I can mirror it across. And then once I have those points, I can graph that parabola. Number 11 here. I am going to do my axis of symmetry, my vertex, and my y-intercept exactly the same. I'm going to do -b/2a here, and I'm going to get an axis of x equals -2. I'm going to plug that in. I'm going to vertex of -2, 4, and my y-intercept is going to be 0, 8. So I'm going to do that exactly the same way I did before for standard form. -b/2a, plug that in to get your y value, 0c. It's exactly the same. The difference here is that when I graph it, I have to consider, is my graph itself dashed? Do I shade above or below? And so when I do all of this, I need to make sure that I know how to do the rest of this graph. So I'm going to do this part exactly the same. And then I'm going to look at this and say, is it solid or is it dashed? Well, it's just less than. So if it's just less than, my graph itself is going to be dashed. So instead of doing a solid line to do my parabola, I'm going to do a dashed line because this is just less than. And then I'm going to say, well, is it above or is it below? This indicates that it is below. All right, so I'm going to look over here at my y value and I'm going to say everything below this parabola. All right, and so I'm going to shade everything below the parabola. All right. And I know it looks like some of it is above the parabola, but it's below this point in the parabola. So you have to remember the parabola is doing this. So the best way to see which line, which side of the parabola you're going to shade is to look at your vertex. All right, so look at your vertex. If I'm below it, I'm going to shade this side of the parabola all around. If I had been above it, I would have shaded this side of the parabola. All right, but finding it's identical. Finding it is identical. If it is less than or greater than, it's going to be dashed. All right, if it's less than or equal to, greater than or equal to, it's going to be solid. This is an inequality. You're going to do exactly the same when you graph it. You're going to say, my axis is going to be my h, so it's x equals 1. My vertex is going to be my hk, so it's going to be 1, 1. And then my y-intercept I have to solve for. It's going to be 0, plug it in, and it's going to end up being 3. So I have 1 squared times 2 plus 1, so 0, 3. I'm going to figure those out the same way I did for any vertex form, right? I'm still going to do h, hk, and then plug it in to solve for my y-intercept. So this is still x equals h. This is still hk. This is still 0, and then plug in your 0 to get your y. All of that's the same because it's vertex form. The only difference is how do I go about graphing it? I'm still going to do my dashed line here for my axis. I'm still going to plot the point for my vertex. I'm still going to plot the point for my y-intercept and mirror it. And at this point, I'm going to stop and figure out what I need to do next. I'm going to go up here. It is or equal to. You see this or equal to? That means I'm going to do a solid line. Okay? So this means I'm going to graph this with a solid line. And this one here is greater than. So I'm going to look at my vertex and say everything inside of this, above it right here, is going to be shaded. And so I'm going to shade everything inside of my parabola there. Okay, and if it kept going, if I had drawn it further, right, all the way up to the end of the graph, you can see the shading would have gone all the way up there. This is find the length and width of a rectangle whose length is 5 centimeters longer than its width and whose area is 50 centimeters squared. So you'll notice I do say set up a quadratic equation for these. So you do, if it's a rectangle, you probably want to draw a picture. It says the length is 5 centimeters longer than the width. I don't know the width. I don't know the length, but I can write it in terms of the width. All right. The area is length times width. So if I were to multiply these two, I will get my area, which it actually already told me what that is. That's 50. All right. So if I know that they give me the area and I set this up, I'm pretty much have my equation. I'm going to simplify it and solve. To simplify it, you're going to distribute. So we have x squared plus 5x equals 50. Anytime you have an x squared, you're going to want to move everything over to one side because you can either solve it by factoring or solve it by the quadratic formula. All right. Most of these that are rectangular, you're going to be able to solve at this point by factoring because we're talking about lengths and widths. So I'm likely not going to give you like the square root for a length or width at this point. A little bit higher math, you'll see that. So I'm just going to move this 50 over. I have x squared plus 5x minus 50 equals 0. Factors of 50 that multiply to give me negative 50, add to give me positive 5 are going to be x plus 10, x minus 5. 10 times negative 5 is negative 50. 10 plus negative 5 is positive 5. If I set each one equal to 0, I get x equals negative 10 or x equals 5. I am talking about the length of something. One of those is not logical. Which one is not logical here? Negative 10. Yeah, this is not a logical answer, okay? So the only thing my width can be is 5. My width is 5 centimeters, which means my length is 10 centimeters. I can just plug it in right here to figure out what the other one is if I solve for one. So lots of words here. A ball is shot from a cannon into the air with an upward velocity of 40 feet per second. The equation that gives the height of the ball at any time t is h of t equals negative 16t squared plus 40. That should be a t. I don't know why it has an ft. Just make that a t. Plus 1.5. Where t represents the number of seconds and h of t represents the height, find the maximum height. All right, this word maximum means you are looking for the vertex. Remember I said the maximum or the minimum will always happen at the vertex, all right? Normally we think of it as an x and y. In this case, they gave it to us in t and h, okay? So they ask for the maximum height of the ball, which means they want the y value of the vertex. If they had said, when will this happen? They would have wanted the time or the x value of the vertex, okay? So that's why it's important that it said t represents the time, h represents the height, okay? So they're telling you your x value represents how long it's going to take for this to happen. Your y value represents where it will happen, okay? But when you see the word maximum or minimum with a quadratic, they are just simply saying what's the vertex. This is actually a quadratic in standard form. So if you look at this guy right here, if I corrected that to a t for some reason, it wants to give me that's a t there. This is standard form, ax squared plus bx plus c. So if I'm trying to find my vertex, I'm going to use my negative b over 2a and then plug that in to get the y value of my vertex. So maximum or minimum just means vertex. You have to read the problem to see what part of the vertex they're asking for, okay? So I'm going to find my vertex the same way, negative b over 2a. In this case, negative 40 over 2 times negative 16. All right, so negative 40 over 2 times negative 16. This is going to give me the x value. Now here's the thing. If they had asked for when this will happen, once you find the x value, you would actually be done here. But they're not asking for when it happened, they're asking for where it happened. And so this is going to give me a decimal of 1.25 there. All right, 1.25. That is actually telling me the time. It will reach its maximum height in 1.25 seconds. 1.25 seconds. But they actually want the y value because they said, what is the maximum height? So to find the y value, I just go back and plug that in. Negative 16 times 1.25 squared plus 40 times 1.25 plus 1.5. You can do that in your calculator, right? So you're not going to have to do all that in your head. When you plug that in, you do if you have a large calculator, you can actually plug it in just like that. You can say negative 16 times 1.25 squared plus 4 times 1.25 plus 1.5. It will do it in order of operations. If you have a smaller calculator, by that I mean some calculators are smaller and they do it with every keystroke, okay? So if you have a smaller calculator, you want to do it a piece at a time. You want to do 1.25 and square it. Then you want to multiply that answer by negative 16. You want to do 4 times 1.25. So you want to do order of operations if you have a smaller calculator. If you have a larger, like a TI-83, 4, or 5, somewhere in there, then you can just plug it all in with parentheses and it will do it correctly. If you put it all in, you should get 26.5. What you found here was your vertex, 1.25, 26.5. That's your vertex. They're asking for height, so they're asking for the y value of this. So your maximum height here is going to be 26.5 feet. That is your answer. Make sure you answer the question, all right? I need to know that you know what the answer is. So by that I mean, don't put all these numbers down and assume I'm going to weed out the answer, okay? I need to see this right here. I need to know that you know what your answer is, all right? I need to know that you know your answer. So I need you to answer it this way if I ask for a specific piece. If I were to ask for 2 pieces and say, what's the maximum height and when did it happen? I would want to see maximum height, 26.5 feet at 1.25 seconds, all right? So I need you to verbalize what your answer is on these word problems.